Hi everyone! Welcome to Cafe Libellus, where I, Kristen, talk about books in the most comfortable way I know possible. Today we're going to be reviewing the book The Road by Cormac McCarthy. Now this is actually the third book review that I'm doing today. I previously reviewed A Gentleman in Moscow and the 5th season, and I will post links to those reviews down in the description below. So, The Road. This one is kind of notorious. It was written by Cormac McCarthy. It was written by Cormac McCarthy. This book was written by Cormac McCarthy and published in 2006 by Vintage Books. This is basically the story of a father and son traversing a desolate gray America, just trying to get south. That's the entire premise of this book. This has come highly recommended in a lot of different circles. So I had seen an uptick in recommendations for it in Reddit. But not only that, but I'd seen it highly recommended in the past. I'd actually wanted to read this back when I was in middle school, when it a couple years after it first came out. But my dad, who had seen the movie adaptation of it, said that it was a bit too intense for me at that age. So I finally picked it up and decided to read it. And I have mixed feelings. Technically, it is very well done. I could sing its praises on a technical level. The style in this book is such that the sentences are primarily short and clipped. There aren't many descriptions of things because there isn't much to see or feel. A lot of this is action. I think it would be best to demonstrate how the writing style is with this passage here. He walked out in the gray light and stood, and he saw for a brief moment the absolute truth of the world. The cold, relentless circling of the interstate earth. Darkness implacable. The blind dogs of the sun in their running. The crushing black vacuum of the universe. And somewhere, 2 hunted animals trembling like ground foxes in their cover. Borrowed time and borrowed world and borrowed eyes with which to sorrow it. Pretty depressing, right? It's a good indication of the entire book. You notice the shorter sentence style. It's very bleak, very straightforward. Waxes poetic sometimes. It's really a good indication of how this entire book is written. That's also the extent to which character feelings are described. Most of the time we learn about the characters primarily through their actions. If they do feel things, you can tell through the way they act. McCarthy does not spend much time at all talking about how they feel. And I think that's because in this world, you don't really have time to feel anything non-essential. You don't have time to dwell on things. You only think about your survival and the risks to your survival that may be present. Here's a really good passage that will hopefully show how McCarthy uses action to characterize people instead of introspection. The man and the boy followed him for a while. Then they overtook him. An old man, small and bent. The boy squatted and put a hand on the old man's shoulder. "He's scared, Papa. The man is scared." The man looked up and down the road. "If this is an ambush, he goes first," he said. "He's just scared, Papa." "I don't think you should touch him. Maybe we should give him something to eat." He stood looking off down the road. "Damn," he whispered. He looked down at the old man. Perhaps he'd turn into a god and them into trees. "All right," he said. Through action and reaction, you can tell that the boy is kind and trusting and pretty naive. And the man, in turn, is very cynical and jaded. He's very wary. The first thing upon meeting a stranger is that they might be ambushed, that they shouldn't trust him, and that they shouldn't waste their resources on him. Whereas the boy thinks nothing of that. Part of that may be due to lack of experience, though I'm sure that is something that he's learned living in this world. But a big part of it is that this boy is just trusting and kind. That's just who he is. And you can see that through his actions. He pleads with his father to give the old man some food. From an adult's perspective, that's not something you should do. You shouldn't share with strangers. You shouldn't be altruistic when you're trying to survive. But that's just how the boy is. And the boy is the light of this novel. Without the boy, it would just be bleak death everywhere. And it shows the value of having that hope and retaining humanity. Because if you don't have that in this desolate world, then what else do you have? What's the point of living? That is a very powerful theme of this book, and McCarthy does a really good job of making you feel that you need to retain hope, because everything else is so bleak. Most of it is detailing travel, and sometimes there will be horrible events that occur. And that is horrible with a capital H. Like baby eating cannibalism horrible. I won't spoil anything with a quote to show how McCarthy makes it terrifying, but suffice to say that he describes it in the same way he describes everything. Straightforward, blunt, matter of fact. And it only adds to the horror that this comes as unsurprising, and that they don't have time to really dwell on it and feel anything. Now, as much as I praise this book for its technical aspects, I wasn't actually very interested in it. It wasn't as exciting or impactful as I was expecting a post-apocalyptic novel to be. And I'm sure it wasn't meant to be exciting, but it was meant to be impactful. It was a really slow read in the beginning. It took me about 80 to 100 pages to really get into the book, to get used to the writing style, to get attached to the characters. But that still didn't really help with, it still didn't really help with feeling the impact that McCarthy was trying to go for. I don't think this is a flaw of the book. I think that honestly it's probably more something to do with me and my exposure to post-apocalyptic media. So like I said earlier, this book came out in 2006. Since then, we've seen an uptick in a lot of post-apocalyptic media. And I think that is in large part due to the influence of The Road. The Road kind of repopularized the genre. Post-apocalyptic has always been a popular genre, but this really inspired people. I think in the early 2010s, we started to see an uptick in post-apocalyptic media. There was The Walking Dead, The Last of Us, the Fallout series, the movie Children of Men, the Book of Eli. And so all of this media got, I think, inspired by The Road. And they were able to build on it. They were able to build on the themes, the style, the techniques that they used to convey the same thematic messages. I think I would have really enjoyed this book if not for the video game The Last of Us. I think that The Last of Us is, my generation's version of The Road. It's a game where you play as a father figure trying to save this girl in a post-apocalyptic world so that they can find a brighter future. This should ring some bells because it's pretty much the exact same setup and premise as The Road. There are a few tweaks in the story that make it a bit more impactful than The Road, but the biggest one is that the media The Last of Us is told in is interactive. It's a video game. You are the guy and the girl trying to find their way and survive in this world. You feel the terror of dying, and you feel the terror of dying or losing the child firsthand. You experience the horror of this world firsthand. And that is just such a huge advantage over something like a novel. I think because of that, I did not find The Road as impactful as other people have. So overall, I would give this book 7 out of 10. I think it's an important read for those who like the genre and like the messages that post-apocalyptic media usually portray. But it certainly is heavy, and it's certainly not something you should read for enjoyment. This is a bleak piece of literature with important things to talk about and discuss, but don't read it if you're looking for a good time, because you will just get depressed. It's a good thing Ember's with me. She keeps me happy, don't you, Ember? So anyway, if you do end up reading the book, let me know what you think about it. I think it'd actually be really great if you are a consumer of post-apocalyptic themed media. Let me know which ones you like. I could only really think of the media that I was familiar with, but I'm sure the entire genre has just built upon the foundation that the road set up. If you do end up reading it, I hope you enjoy it. Thanks for eavesdropping. I'll catch you next time.